Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spinner Reviews, and today is my third belated list for 2016 and the first week or so of 2017. It's my top 5 movies of 2016. For those of you guys that don't really follow this channel much, this is primarily a music reviewing channel, and I'm doing this completely unscripted, mostly to get rid of any of the pretense that I have any idea what I'm talking about in relation to the art of filmmaking. I did this sort of list last year, had kind of a good time with that, and figured I'd do the same kind of thing here, just kind of giving just the thoughts I have off the top of my head about these, no matter how short or long it takes to get those out there. Especially because I did see a good amount of movies this year. I believe 20 on the sheet I have in front of me, and most of them I did really enjoy. In fact, instead of like honorable mentions, I'm just going to rank numbers 6 through 20 in the description down there. So probably the biggest difference you're going to see between this list and last year's was the inclusion of a lot more independent and smaller scale movies. This time around, there were a few more that I kind of went outside the typical Regal theaters to see, and you're going to be seeing a couple more of those on this top 5. But right now at number 5, we have Don't Think Twice. So this is probably the most down-to-earth movie about comedy I've ever seen. It stars a bunch of pretty big names in the comedy world: Keegan-Michael Key, Kate McCucci, Mike Birbiglia, who also directed the movie, them and a few others. It basically follows them in this improv troupe, which is, improv is also something, fun fact, that I've always been kind of fascinated by. I've taken a class here and there, but they always get canceled for some reason. But anyway, the general theme of this movie is that one of these people ends up getting a gig in a bigger sort of Saturday Night Live-like thing, and it sort of follows how everyone processes that, from that guy himself to another member who is a few years older and feels like he kind of missed his chance for no good reason. And the cool thing is that there's no clear-cut antagonist in any of this. You can really see where everyone is coming from in their reactions. It's all very believable, and of course, being a movie about an improv troupe, it's going to naturally have some really funny moments, even though you can tell it's not really the point. It's just, you know, something that's naturally gonna happen along the way, especially with the talent involved. But yeah, this is a pretty compelling movie about just creative ambition and stuff like that, which you're going to see in maybe one or two other ones on this. Maybe that says more about me than anything else, but still. Great movie. Oh, and I highly recommend listening to the episodes of You Made It Weird with Pete Holmes, where he had Mike Birbiglia and Michael Key on. Especially the Mike Birbiglia one, you get a lot of insight into this, since you can tell Pete was a huge fan of the movie for very good reasons. Okay, and let's get the predictable one out of the way for me. Captain America: Civil War. And I've made it no secret, as you've seen in my last one, that I am kind of an MCU fanboy. I've never really hidden that in any way, shape, or form. Doctor Strange kind of just barely missed the cut for this. Only like a couple minor issues getting in the way of that. Civil War is basically everything that you could kind of want out of an MCU movie nowadays. I actually, admittedly, haven't seen Age of Ultron. I just, for some reason, didn't get around to it, and the reception wasn't that great. I'll probably catch up to it at some point, but from what I've heard about that one, this kind of seems like a better Avengers 2 than that in a weird way. So I saw this a few weeks after that other movie about two superheroes being pitted against each other that we don't mention the name of. And what I was thinking as I was watching Civil War is, this is that movie, but if all of the problems were taken out of it, basically. Like whether you're on Tony's side or Steve's side, like, you can definitely see where both of them are coming from, and I'm kind of repeating some of the stuff from what I said about Don't Think Twice, oddly enough. But it's a much more complex kind of conflict than you see in a lot of superhero movies, and I really have to give them credit for that, and actually pulling it off without, you know, coming across super pretentious and preachy. I honestly haven't decided yet if I like this more or less than Winter Soldier. It's around the same area of quality to me. It has a lot of the same strong suits, especially with how, like, everything from other MCU movies kind of comes together, especially from Winter Soldier. It's also very well handled. Obviously, this came earlier in the year, so I'm having trouble remembering the exact plot details, and I'll admit the villain, like in a lot of Marvel movies, isn't that strong, but it's something that I'm very easily able to overlook just because of how well-rounded it is everywhere else. Okay, and from that little detour, we're going to go right back into artsy-fartsy territory with my number 3, The Lobster. This is the one where I have the most tentative recommendation, because if you completely find yourself turned off by it, I completely understand. Basically, it takes place in this dystopian future where you are required by whatever higher-ups there are in this world to find a soulmate. And if you're single, you have to be in this hotel for, I believe, 45 days, and if you don't, you get turned into an animal of your choice. You probably saw that a lot in the trailer. I just kind of want to recap it here since it's a very odd and out there concept. But the thing that I think is going to turn more people off than anything else is the acting style. It's very dry, very monotone, especially in the performances from Colin Farrell, who's sort of the lead guy and all this, who's pretty unrecognizable, actually. Him and a lot of the other people in this, especially the people like in the hotel and stuff, and the people he's kind of set up with at first, they're just very cold, very emotionless. And I can see some people saying, well, I mean, I get that it's intentional, part of the aesthetic, but that still makes it boring to watch. Personally, I thought it made it, if anything, even more engaging just because of what that entails. Just like this world where even the most basic, like, love emotions are just taken so clinically. And I'll be free to admit whenever something is just pretentious and obtuse for the sake of just being obtuse and weird, but I don't think this is that. I think it's a really interesting thing, especially for someone like me who's 20 and still hasn't been in a relationship yet. Not from lack of trying, but you know what I'm getting at. The ending I can see being a little anticlimactic, but I just found it satisfying in a really weird way. I just think I just couldn't help but love this thing. Again, I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, and I don't mean that in like a you won't get it kind of way. Like, I genuinely understand, but I would definitely recommend it just to see like how far it can test your tolerance of this kind of atmosphere, since it was definitely that for me. And number 2 is the most recent one out of any of the movies here, Arrival. So, I, for a while, have been a fan of this channel called Pretty Much It. And the main guy there, Eric Striffler, who, again, I've been following for a good amount of time, he's had this philosophy for a few years of avoiding trailers, especially when you already know you want to see the movie or you just think the synopsis is interesting. Just don't spoil any of the plot or anything for yourself. Just let yourself experience it as it comes. And I, for the most part, don't really do that. I mean, I tend to stop watching after like 2 trailers, but for this movie, all I knew was that everyone on my Twitter feed was obsessed with it, and they stressed to not learn anything about the plot going in, just to see it and experience it for yourself. And I knew that it was like sort of a realistic take on sci-fi movies, but just in that sort of vague sense. So I saw it, and oh my, this is definitely like the most thought-provoking movie I've seen all year, and maybe not even like thematically, like in the case of maybe The Lobster or something like that, but more in just the concepts surrounding it and how dense and multi-layered it could be. I feel like I have to say what the movie's about in some way. Basically, it follows this communications and linguistics expert who's hired to make an effort to communicate with these aliens, or like just extraterrestrial creatures that come down to Earth, and they don't look like your typical, you know, little green men. I really have to give it to whoever like designed the visuals and like the concepts behind what they do, because it's just testing the limits of what we can comprehend as far as communication and like deconstructing everything involved with it. And as someone that did get an associate's degree in communication, God, I'm associating with these movies with myself in such these shallow ways. It was kind of a mind-blowing experience, I'm not gonna lie. And as everything unraveled and just these revelations kept going, even in like areas of the movie where you didn't expect them to come out of, it sticks in your brain, you know? And I almost feel guilty not putting this number 1, but I almost feel like I need to see it a second time to really comprehend everything that was going on in it. This movie is fantastic. Don't go into it looking for the typical, you know, shoot 'em up space kind of sci-fi movie. This is anything but that. It's engaging all the way through, but it's a pretty slow burn of a movie, but it's well worth it. Check it out. Now on to number 1. It's Sing Street. After all of the superheroes and dystopian futures and concepts beyond human comprehension and all of these incredible themes going into this stuff, what got me at the end of the day? hardcore relatability. This is basically a coming-of-age movie set in the 80s, following this socially awkward, aspiring musician who struggles with getting a band together and writing songs and getting into the music of the time without kind of falling into things. And you understand where I'm coming from with this, right? No? This is the first video you saw from this channel? Well, too bad. Because I connected so hard with this movie. It just kind of captures all those little intricacies of the concepts I was talking about before, and there's like some really funny moments, some really heartfelt moments. You're gonna get your tropes here and there, I suppose, but it's just handled in such an endearing and earnest way, and how it connects with all of the great songs on the soundtrack that really don't feel out of place on like a greatest songs of the 80s compilation, and not even in a way that feels like they're going for a kitsch. It just sounds like something that would come out of that time in a really cool way. And yes, of course, music-related movie is my number one for this year. Yeah, I just think this is a perfect movie. Maybe, as Todd in the Shadows pointed out, they learn how to be a tight band a little bit too fast, but hey, you gotta keep the flow of the movie going, so I perfectly understand that. But there isn't really too much to dissect about this movie. It's just a blissful watch with kind of everything you want in a movie like this. Honestly, I would want to see it again, if nothing else, because the local theater I saw it in had terrible audio. And that's it for my favorite movies of 2016. Again, you can rant about all of the Oscar bait I missed in the comments down there. I only went to the movies like once or twice in the past couple of months, so who knows, but these are just my favorites, what I recommend as a semi-casual movie watcher. Obviously, I hope to strive to see more and more every year, but you know, budgets and stuff like that. The last list coming up is of my favorite albums 2016. Hopefully that'll be less than 2 weeks after 2016 ended. Again, leave your thoughts in the comments, follow me on Twitter at SpinItReviews, and yeah, I'll see you on the next time. And they stressed to not leave that in the final cut of the video.